Hello, hello, and welcome to the Demonastery Dojo. I'm Kevin, the Arknight's Shadow, here to chat a little bit about the first real outing with Vynnset Iron Maiden that I have done over at
Hello,
U.S.
hello,
Nationals.
and
Oh, forgot to mute that. uh, so took Vynnset to U.S. Nats. Um, had a pretty respectable run. I started out day one and or ended up 5-2 at the end of day one. I went 3-1 in constructed and 2-1 in draft, uh, which was pretty solid. Honestly, I wasn't sure what sort of CC record I was going to be able to pull off at an event with players of this caliber. Hey Chase, thanks for showing up, hanging out. Um, but I put in a good 70 games worth of prep on Vynnset just in the 2 weeks leading up to Nats. Basically, since locking in my deck choice, jammed quite a few games to come up with a deck list that I was pretty pleased to register for the event. It was not definitely not perfect. I have nowhere near enough reps overall to claim that the deck didn't have room for improvement, which will be evidenced tonight by some changes that I've made before we jam some Talishar later on. Um, Tragically, my 5-2 day one skidded into a 2-5 day two. Um, I had a disastrous draft. Felt like I was cutting chain pretty early on in my pod, but I was across from someone who felt like chain was going to be a good choice. Will Bradshaw and we had a real fun low-powered chain match at the event. But between he and I were two other people who felt that they needed to seemingly felt they needed to force chain as well. So we ended up with a disastrous 4 chain draft pod. And my one win in the pod was against another one of the trademark chain wreck drafts. So Monarch draft can be fickle, but it happens. Ended up, let's see, after the 1 and 2 in draft, that put me at 6-4 in the event. I won my first match of CC in day two, and then dropped the next two that were pretty close games. I played into a Dorinthia, which I hadn't played against since one of my early testing games against my buddy Alex. So first time playing that matchup in a while. Incredibly close. Ended up 1-1. And I just couldn't find that last shadow non-attack action in time to seal the deal. And the next round was against a Briar a standard run-of-the-mill Briar with CMH. That I still game was fairly close. It was 2-4 when it ended. At a certain point, I was down 29-11 and was able to rally back some good damage cycles and brought it close before Briar was able to shut the door on me with a CMH turn. But the games were fun. My opponents were incredibly pleasant. And my only egregious mistake outside of not switching heroes in draft came in round 14. I was playing against Alexi. I won the die roll. I went first. My opening hand was incredible. It was Shadow Puppetry, Incantation, Widespread Ruin, and a fourth card that didn't matter because it was just paying to play Incantation out. So perfect turn 0 setup. I had a 15-point life lead late in the game, and on a late turn when I wasn't floating rune chance across turn cycles, I hit a hand with a yellow pummel and arsenal. Opponent had blocked with all their equipment. They had been forced to play around pummel to not die for a couple turn cycles, so we're almost entirely out of spare resources. And I banished without thinking, or conventionally at other points in the game it would have been perfectly fine. I banished a yellow Deathly Whale from my hand, And then I looked back at my remaining 3 cards in my arsenal and realized that my math didn't math anymore. I needed the yellow to pay for the pummel from Arsenal to try and seal the deal, or at least guarantee take all 4 cards from Lexi again. Uh, and instead, I was left with an incantation in hand and a blue and a yellow, and could not actually play the pummel. My opponent decided that was a good time to call the bluff on the pummel, and they were left with a codex, which clawed them back into the game. I took extra blood debt damage that I shouldn't have, and ended up losing because Lexi is a very, very powerful deck, and you can't afford to make mistakes into it. And I did just that. So all in all, I would say the Vynnset deck went 5-3 at Nats. I went 4-4. Tragically for Vynnset, I was the one dragging her down in the event. But despite that, still looks like I was managed to be the top placing Vynnset at US Nats. There was a whole 9 of us entered in day 1. Only 2 made day 2, and I think my record ended up being the best in the event. The really cool takeaways from the event are the deck felt good the whole weekend. I have very few complaints and only a few modifications that I want to make. Had a few things dawn on me playing matches these higher level events, so a few cool new ideas came out of it. But the core of the deck is very powerful. We've got something really strong here to work with, and so basically to run through my matchups real quick. I'm not going to go super detailed into all of them, but I ended up playing 7 different heroes in 8 rounds. My only repeat was Alexi. I played 1 each day. Round 1 was a little rough to start off. The one matchup, actually, the 2 matchups that I would have said I wanted to avoid more than anything else going into day 1, or I mean just into Nats in general, were Bravo. Tough matchup. I think it's winnable, but I know that I don't have the reps into it to, be completely confident in my game plan. And I think that showed a little bit. It was a good game. It was a slog back and forth. In the end, we sort of ground down. When I finally died, it was 6. Bravo was at 6 life. But I think the major reason that in that game that I wasn't able to pull it out, there were 3 different turn cycles where the Bravo had a reasonably powerful attack and were doing the pummel bluff. And 3 different times in that game, there was a pummel. I had to look at my hand, decide if it could be functional, or sort of what degree it could be functional if I lost an extra card. So there were a couple times where I had to either block more heavily or not block at all. And so some of those times, the threat of pummel, made me block in a way that I didn't want to if it was just vanilla damage. But I had turns where, it was just too risky to call the bluff, and then the Bravo, after I, blocked how I ended up blocking, plays out Sigil of Solace, gains 3 life, and moves on with their life, which was a kind of worst case scenario, right? Because at that point, I have made a play compensating for pummel, and then they just gain 3 anyways. And so that happened on 3 different turn cycles, and Bravo ended up at 6. So I dealt 43 damage before they killed me. And, I'm sure that I took probably the better part of 6 damage to myself in that game too. So I think it's definitely a matchup that I can learn to make it a winnable matchup, but without the quantity of reps, I think it's going to continue to be tough. So that was rough finding that in round 1. Not what I wanted to start the event off against, but Jim is a fickle mistress, and I moved on. Round 2 got paired into Eviscerai, my other homie. Oh no, it's so dark already. Days are getting shorter. I might have to turn the lights back on. Played against a lovely opponent playing Viscerai in round 2. We had a delightful match that was unbelievably aggressive. So I threw out about seven. I went first, got a solid setup, and threw out about 15 to 17 damage on the first turn. And Viscera came right back with a 20, 25-ish damage turn with Revel, Rune Flash, Rattle Bones, Breaking Skeleton for resources, went 4 wide, um, and it got down to about 6-4 before I was able to have another, a turn explosive enough to close the door on the game. But that match felt pretty good, and things sort of flowed like you want. Good balance of, gates and non-gates, and we saw the cards we wanted to see. Round 3, my nightmare continued from round 1. I got paired into Tree Frog Dash, which I had an abstract idea of how that matchup would play out, but my only rep into it was from from one of my streams from the last few weeks, and it was a slog, and I got fatigued, and it wasn't particularly close. But this time, I had a better plan. It was the same board plan as into Bravo. We bust out Nebula Blade for it, um, and count on this being a 2-cost 4-power attack threatening to make a rune chant, and it did its job wonderfully. You get to take it a little slower. Some turn cycles you're just concerned about taxing their hand a little bit, so that they can't just load shoot a bunch. You need to make sure that you keep enough pressure on while still trying to set yourself up for some more explosive turns. This game went. It was a 48-minute game. I think we finished the round with less than 3 minutes to go, and it was an absolute grind. Um, the the star player in that match for me was definitely Nebula Blade. And this is not the exact version of the deck list that I played at the event. This is the updated version. But Nebula Blade was key. It chewed through armor. I think in that game it chewed through the second point of Arcanite Skullcap. It caught the Tunic block. It caught an Ironhide Legs block. And it got 1 or 2 0-for-4 defense reactions in the game, which, obviously that's reasonably efficient for our opponent to use a D-React to stop a theoretical 5-pointer. But those are D-Reacts that didn't get applied to all of our other attacks that we were lobbing their way. I don't know if it's completely necessary to be on Nebula Blade in that matchup, but it felt good, and so for now that's going to continue to be my plan. I did have some discussions with people around possibly doing a different weapon for these fatigue matchups, particularly because in the latest stage of the game, right? Let's assume players are smashing their resources together, and the final attack that I lob out meets the final pair of 3 blocks that Dash has, and we've got nothing left and our decks are empty. In that theoretical situation, we'd lose if our opponent is able to keep their Tunic up while they get to that point, right? Because they can, every 3 turns, Tunic, resource, load a pistol, every 3, and fire it off, right? That's a clock, and we don't have that luxury, right? We would, on a long enough timeline, we end up banishing the last cards from our hand, and Tunic doesn't pay for Nebula Blade by itself. So we're on a finite number of turns before the game will end one way or another. So I have been considering, well, funny enough, Rosetta Thorn was in the conversation for a weapon to switch to that, if opponents are spending resources blocking out Nebula Blade, which is exactly what happened in the Bravo and Dash games, then if they're already going out of their way to deny us this rune chant, then why not play a more efficient weapon that still is going to try and push that damage through? And the reason now is because Rosetta Thorn is going to get removed from the format in about 2 weeks, but there's definitely a world where, even just for these next 2 weeks, Rosetta Thorn over Nebula Blade might be the correct call. Hey Alex, thanks for coming out. Congrats on On the top 32, Alex led Team Eclipse at Nats this year and came in with the 10-4 record. Pretty much crushed it. I think he went 3-1, 2-1 in CC and draft both days. So very, very solid showing and a nice finish uh, for Team Eclipse. Um, but this dash matchup, it took forever, and neither of us was playing slowly. We just probably went through two full cycles of cards before the game ended. Um, Early on, I was, trying to squeak through some damage, trying to set up for a few more explosive turns. Incantations were hugely important for keeping foot on the gas and uh, you know, trying to keep pressure up across turns. And notably, especially in that sort of matchup, I would, whenever possible, try and avoid having two incantations in play at the same time, because you need them to improve as many separate turn cycles as possible. So you probably want to sit on these to not overlap them, which is actually a takeaway from a different match that I'll get to in the future. Um, but specifically, because I know in the late game things can grind down, um, and because in this matchup I was running Tunic Grasp of the Arknight, because it's going to be longer, going to be slower, more likely to hit more turn cycles where I miss on either miss on a banish target or don't have the setup that I want, and Grasp lets me pitch a blue and still be able to come in with a 2-cost gate. So early on in this game, I saw a decent number of Phantom Wraiths and Phantom Banshees, and even some Widespread Ruins, and I went out of my way to make sure I was pitching these 2-cost gates, because on the second cycle, after we'd burned through sort of the creme de la creme of our deck's runechant generating resources, I wanted to make sure that we could still get off our rune gates and still keep pressure on even into the late game, which ended up proving to be pretty invaluable. The other all-star of that matchup, because it gave two really explosive turns that ate the opponent's entire hand and pushed damage and meant we were facing no crackback, was Revel in Runeblood. This card is as incredible as advertised, and in our deck when games go long, when we're stacking up extra cards in Banish, this card reads deal 4 damage and give you 4 resources, which is just a remarkable rate for a card that costs actual 0. Um, the final turn where we took our opponent down from like 5 to 1 was I think it was an envelop into a gate into Creeper's Revel Nebula Blade turn, which was pretty much sealed the deal. And at that point, it was just a matter of finding our next shadow card to win the game once and for all. That matchup is a grind, and if Fatigue Dash is ever a primo deck in the format, I would have to rethink playing Vynnset, I think, because it's just I don't know if I could handle that doing that for an entire event. But the game was fun. It was close. It was tough. It was really cool to see that it could come through against a deck that's dedicated to a strategy that I would say the current conventional wisdom for Vynnset is that, oh, well, just fatigue her, because you can simply fatigue her, right? And I think if you're not prepared to play into fatigue, equipped with a full real game plan that lets you overcome what they're trying to do, uh, they certainly can. But knowing when to set up, when to try and push for bigger turns, I think that's sort of a feeling or a game intuition that I feel like I might have retained from my days playing Chain. Though I will say this is harder. This is like Chain trying to beat Fatigue Prism without without being able to play the Eclipse package, and Ursur. So you basically have to do it all with cards. You're never going to just nuke them from orbit. But yeah, that's sort of what that matchup felt like. Ended up winning that one at 5, with my opponent finally at 0. Round 4, played my first Lexi of the event, and things went well. I won the die roll. I chose to go first, and I think my Lexi opponent in that round played two three of a kinds during the game, and they weren't unusable, right? They weren't okay. Three of a kind into, you know, Rain Razors, three of a kind, Arctic Incarceration. They weren't that level of bad, but they weren't sort of the pinnacle, like terrifying three of a kind turns that your opponent that everyone is afraid of out of Lexi. But they were serviceable turns. Um, but still, I ended up winning that one relatively handily. I was at 10 when the game ended. So read into that what you wish. I feel like I have a fairly good Lexi matchup with this deck, which feels like a pretty important thing to have for a deck in this metagame. Ended day one 3-1 in CC. Was very pleased. Had some really tough games, and didn't really face slouch players there, and so coming away with a 3-1 with a deck this new felt pretty great. Uh, so went into drafted Chain. It was open. Ended up 2-1 in the pod. Played against a Bolton in the first round of that draft. That they went for the fatigue plan, and my boy, oh boy, did my shackles not cooperate. I love my boy Chain, but he really didn't want me to win that game. I think my deck had 5 copies of Seeds of Agony, 2 Riftbinds, and 3 Bounding Demigons, and I drew literally all of them and banished literally none of them in this game. Actually, I might have banished a blue Riftbind. I think that's the one I hit. Meanwhile, I banished my copy of Shadow Puppetry in all 3 games I played with that deck. I banished my red Captain's Call, my red Arcanic Crackle, a whole bunch of cards that you look and you're like, oh, that's a really gas Chain card. Well, turns out they're not as strong when they just sit and banish and do nothing for you. So, lost to start that draft, but brought it back with 2 more wins to end the day 5-2. And all in all, according to plan. Day 2, Disaster Chain draft. Get out of that at 1-2 to be 6-4. Go back into CC. And the next round is into Uzuri, which was round 11. And it was a fun game. It was similar. I took a similar approach to playing against Dash, except I kept my Flail of Agony and Scepter as the weapons. I brought in a handful of extra cards, not a ton, but a few, since they're going to try and banish, and that fatigue is sort of what they're trying to do to us. And it worked out. Uzuri doesn't have a repeatable way to make Flail not a good weapon for us. So once we had chewed through, they were running Tunic, Nullrune Gloves, so them not having access to Flick Times was good for us. And then it was Crown of Providence, Tunic, Nullrune Gloves, and Snapdragon Scalers. And because they were on Snapdragon Scalers and not Black Tech Whisperers, they accrued 4 silver over the course of that game, but never had anything to do with it, which was pretty huge. It was an interesting game. There's an interesting back and forth between the fact that our Uzuri opponent would love nothing more than to hit with a Leave No Witnesses and eat your arsenal, banish a card, try and get some value there. I did actually. There was an interesting moment where my opponent played Codex of Frailty, and they selected Leave No Witnesses. So I looked at my graveyard and was like, well, which of these 2-cost Runegate attacks do I want in my banish most of all? Ended up putting a red Deathly Delight back. And my opponent actually thought, I think they thought that the Arsenal banish trigger from Leave No Witnesses was mandatory. It is mandatory, but it says up to 1 card. So they ended up hitting me with that, banishing a card off the top, and they had me put a Deathly Delight from Arsenal into banish, which was not good for them. And it's something to keep in mind if you play Uzuri. They don't have to force you to banish the card that you arsenal. But in general, we were able to just do Vynnset things. Our turn cycles were on average bigger than theirs. We won the die roll and got to go first, so we got to do the good setup that we like to do. Um, about 2/3 of the way through the game, life totals were, the low teens, and Flail of Agony started being a real problem for Uzuri, to the point where basically there was a point in the game where they started giving full cards to Flail, and when that happened, that felt like a huge, I guess, I don't know, not turning point, but felt like things were in my favor at that point. Once Flail was eating real cards, um, or just connecting occasionally. My opponent correctly identified that letting Flail hit when I'm already going to end up with 2 rune chants from a Deathly Whale, the difference between 2 and ending with 2 or 3 is negligible, right? That unlocks literally only 1 card in the deck, which is Widespread Annihilation. And we were able to just snowball that to a win. It was 2-1 when the game ended, but if I recall correctly, I believe that was one of the, a lot of those points of damage going down to 2 were me dealing damage to myself. We were able to carry spare rune gates across turn cycles probably more than half of the turns in the game. Plus, I activated Flail of Agony many, many times. So ended up 2-1, but we're able to beat Uzuri before they got particularly close to fatiguing us. It's interesting. I think that in both the Dash and Uzuri games, I was able to shut the door on the game before we got to this point, but I do feel like I was on my way to offensively fatiguing my opponents. Right? Like a good number of turns in the game, we're going Envelop in Darkness +3 into like Deathly Wail for 9. Well, there's a 3-card block if you don't want to take damage, and plenty of turn cycles where we just do big numbers and we get their entire hand for them to minimize the damage that they're taking. And so that's an interesting avenue to think about, because I think this deck is for decks that aren't Bravo or like Prism or an Illusionist with Phantasmal Footsteps, a way to abuse or a way to consistently stop Flail without losing resources and cards from your deck. I think this deck is tougher to fatigue than it looks. But that was unfortunately the last win we would get with Uzuri, with Vynnset in the event. And after that, it was Dory in round 12. This game was close. It was a slog. I think this is one where, in hindsight, it's very obvious, but going into it, obviously Dory is not one of the premier threats of the format. I had given relatively limited amount of brain power into deciding a sideboard plan, and I felt like running Tunic and Grasp into Dory would be correct. In hindsight, I wish I had just run full fridge, gone with Grasp, and otherwise kept the equipment lineup the same. Tunic was good. I definitely had 1 or 2 times in the game where, Tunic for a Runeblade incantation and then Runegate attack, or Tunic into Envelop in Darkness and, come in for 12 off of 2 cards. But being on only Grasp and Crown of Providence meant there wasn't a turn cycle where I could really confidently be like, my hand is incredible. Let me shove six block of equipment in front of this and just rip tempo away from that. And I really felt it over the course of the game. The game, it was really close. I had a life lead for the majority of it. We got down to 5-5, eventually 1-1, and we were again close on time. So this is a deck that you want to be pretty comfortable with before taking to a big event, particularly if you are not fond of drawing, because the games really, really can grind down towards the end. Eventually, at the very end, it was a Dawnblade Dory opponent, for the record. So, the classic plethora of attack reactions and things of that sort. And so I think my mistakes in this game were bringing in Tunic, which is easily fixable, and then in addition to the Tunic issue, I think there was also a turn in the middle of the game before things got too low, um, but a turn where I needed to just call a bluff and make them have it. Because there was a cycle, they were like come in with a red valor Dom Blade for 6, and I think I ended up taking that 6 and then blocking on the next Dom Blade swing, which is a reasonable thing to do. Um, but I think there were a couple that second attack and another turn where I probably should have made made Dory have something scary instead of just respecting a single Dom Blade counter. Because the next two turns, were both. I'm blanking on it. The Dory specialization that gives counters on hit. The next two turns were both featured that card. You know what? I can just pull it up here. Thank you, the power of February. Dory specialization. Glistening Steel Blade. So after not making them have it on a different turn, the next two turn cycles were Glistening Steel Blade turns, which whenever Downblade hits you this turn, put a counter on it. Turns out you can't just let them get 3 counters in a turn. So I was forced to block more heavily on those turns than I really wanted to. And that didn't halt my tempo, but at the same time, it dampened it enough that I wasn't able to really explode and keep the life lead. Things ground down at that point, and one of us has a weapon that requires a payment of 1 life to use, and the other one had Dawnblade. So ground down for a while, a lot of necessary overblocking done by both players, and eventually we were about to be out of time. Dawnblade for 3. I had to call the bluff on a 3-card hand from Dory. I gave him 3. Was going to come back with my own 7 damage turn that was going to take 2 cards, but they had the final react to push it over for the win. It was a very close game, a very fun game. Another very pleasant opponent in that one. I feel like with a little more tuning and a little more experience on the deck, that's probably a matchup that lands in the favorable category for Vynnset, particularly because of the fridge that we can run. And while Dorinthia does block very well, and does have access to Oasis and Steelblade shunts and other good defensive tools, they just are also prone to some hands that aren't good at blocking chunks of rune chance, so we get a good amount of chip damage in that way. They obviously don't want to let our on hits through, and so on demand we can demand 2 cards from hand just by playing Mob Skies into any rune gate, and even that lets us still follow up with Flail. Feels like that matchup is destined to be positive for Vynnset, but at the same time, Dory is never counted out into anyone. So, yeah, close one there, but we're not able to come out ahead. The next round, we played into Briar, and not the fancy Charles Dunn. Congrats, Charles. Your deck was really cool. It was really awesome to see a meta call like that shine through and be able to just take down an entire event. It feels like, outside of, there was kind of Belittle Benoism, Briar was sort of a meta call, but everybody knew that Briar was good. That was just a flavor that did well. It wasn't completely different, right? And Charles's deck was wildly different than all the other conventional builds of Briar that we've seen. It's running like over 32, over 30 blue non-attack actions that blocked for 3 or did other things like Anthem of Spring. But yeah, it was a great meta call, and it absolutely paid off for Charles. And I know Pat Eschke and Michael Dalton also played that and had solid showings as well. So really cool to see that sort of spice be able to shine through, especially at such a high level event like that. But round 13, we're playing regular old CMH Briar. A little bit of spice out of the deck. There was some Flock of the Featherwalkers action going on. But this was a close one. I won the die roll and chose to go first. That is my default into literally everything. If I can go first, I want to. Arsenaling an extra card is incredible, and I don't even have to compromise or risk being blown out by a random opening hand CNC to do it like Lexi does. Um, the game, this one was the closest to almost being a blowout. I was down quite a bit of life at a certain point in this game. Um, my opponent wasn't super familiar with Vynnset and all of her cards, but we played a pretty sloggy back and forth. There weren't too many hugely explosive turns in either direction. We just kept taking partial hits and then coming back for a decent amount, and we traded back and forth for a while. Um, I got more defensive for a few turn cycles and actually was still leaking some damage. So there was a point in this game where I was down, I think 29 to 11. But going down to that 11, I came back with a few back-to-back fairly explosive turns, conveniently featuring Widespread Ruin, which was able to keep the goodness going. In fact, one of the most interesting turn cycles of the game, I was attacking with a Widespread Ruin with Go Again, with a Mob Skies. Opponent obviously doesn't want that hit, and so they blocked for 2, and then reacted out of Arsenal with a Sigil of Suffering. I knew that my opponent was playing this card because they had used 2 of them earlier in the game. One I was able to block the Arcane, and another I was not. This time I didn't have floating resources, but this Sigil of Suffering kind of backfired on our opponent because Widespread Ruin doesn't care who deals the damage. It cares if you've lost life when the combat chain closes. So my opponent used Sigil of Suffering to block for 4, pinged me for a damage on my Widespread Ruin, and instead of just following up with Flail, I closed the chain at that point and hit another copy of Widespread Ruin off the top of the deck. At this point, I was still behind in the life total race. So having hit this Widespread Ruin, I broke Vexing Quillhand after he had blocked the first full attack. I broke Vexing Quillhand and attacked for another 8 points of damage on that turn, and subsequently got another Widespread Ruin trigger that same turn. I don't know if I think that one missed, but theoretically could have drawn 2 extra cards because of the Widespread Ruin effect. So Sigil of Suffering is a interesting card with upside and downside depending on who's attacking and what the game state is. So something to keep in mind if you're facing opposing Vynsets is this can turn on a lot of those pain abilities. Brought the game back very close. It was 4-7 and then 2-4 before our opponent was able to close the door. They had a Channel My Heroic turn, attacked for 7. I was able to block it out and not let them get an embodiment that turn cycle. And my next hand, I got the last of their equipment. I took 2 cards. They took a bit and went down to 4. But the 2 cards they were left with were a pair of 0-for-4s with CMH in play. And it was just too much. And we ended up dying from 2. But the game was close. I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly how I sideboarded for that one. I don't remember if I brought. I think I did bring some of the pummels in. But given that I had played 3 different opponents where I had to bring in the fatigue package, and I was already very, very dead for top 8 by this point in the tournament, I think I decided to sideboard as though they were not playing Fatigue Briar and assume that they were playing the CMH aggressive version, which paid off. So, fortunately or unfortunately, not a matchup we're going to have to continue thinking about beyond these next few weeks and the remainder of Nats. But a fun game nonetheless. Pretty back and forth. Very quintessential Flesh and Blood. So at that point, we were 1-2 in CC, going to round 14. Everyone's playing just for fun at that point. Playing for fun, playing for ELO. A few people still fighting for fighting for placement, potentially, sneaking into the top 64, trying to get that cash, that sort of thing. I was completely dead, so I was playing for testing, right? I was give me some good players, let me jam Vynnset, let me learn whatever I can. Round 14 got paired into our second Lexi of the event. Another friendly opponent won the die roll, went first. Every time I won the die roll this event, I went first. I have yet to think of a matchup where that's just wrong. So we'll see how long it is before the rest of the world catches on and chooses to go second just to not let Vynnset go first. But we'll see. So it was Alexi. That was standard equipment loadout for us and standard sideboard plan, which included uh, 5 pummels, 2 Revel and Runebloods when we were going first, uh, and the 2 red Phantom Banshees from the board because we're trying to go aggro. So if we get to a turn cycle where we have to pop Quill Hand, we want it to be a bigger meteor attack like a Phantom Banshee for 7. Uh, Again, mentioned it earlier, but opening hand was actually perfect. Shadow Puppetry, Widespread Ruin, Runeblade Incantation going from the get-go. We, at a certain point in this game, had a very commanding lead. I think it was 19-3 at one point in it. Our opponent took some damage and went to 3 for the sake of keeping a 3-card hand. It was 2 arsenaled cards and a card in hand, but it was a Rain Razors in hand, and they trenched away the 3rd card to play a 3 of a kind, and the 3 of a kind hit a blue and a pair of 0-cost arrows, so actual perfect off of a 3 of a kind. And because we were so far ahead at the time, I ended up, I think I blocked with 1 card just to save a couple points. But we just ate most of that damage. The first 7, we just took it with a smile on our face. And the next one, we blocked a little bit, which brought the life totals down, brought us to like 5-3. And things were fine from there. The next few turn cycles, I was attacking with gates, trying to squeeze through the last few points of damage. Opponent wisely or unwisely, they played around Pummel for a few turn cycles, which when they played around it the first time, I ended up just sticking it in Arsenal and just sat there for a while. The next couple turns, they kept the rune chants coming in, took a card every time. We hit Shadow. I think one time we managed to have 4 rune chants, and another time we hit a Shadow card, so that brought them from 3 to 2 to 1. And we kept the pressure up, kept threatening the Pummel. They kept blocking around it to the point where every piece of equipment that wasn't trench got thrown in front of it. So with New Horizon down, that's a huge get for us. And on a turn where still had full command, full tempo, and I drew up and I had a blue, a Widespread Destruction, which is a yellow Deathly Wail, and a Runeblade Incantation with a yellow Pummel and Arsenal, but no rune chant production floating. And obviously our opponent is not going to let us connect on any more rune chants in the game, unless we can make them unpreventable. So Deathly Wail wasn't really doing much for us at that point. And the correct move would have been banish Runeblade Incantation, get a rune chant, pitch the blue to play our 6-power Widespread Destruction, and then have a yellow in hand to pummel over the top, which would have been for the win, again, unless they gave us literally every card and trench. But if they do that, then they just die to the next rune chant, so that was not really an option. They had to call a bluff at some point. And with a Codex of Frailty as the last card in their hand, they called the bluff on this instant where I banished the wrong card like a dummy. And I wasn't able to pummel over the top for the win. I started taking 2 points of blood debt per turn instead of 1, which was a bigger problem because there was no sign of escaping the blood debt that was going on. And they Codex of Frailty for an Endless Arrow, which I had to give 2 cards to because we had chewed through our equipment at that point. Uh, and it just spiraled from that point. So, note to self, slow down a little bit in those late games when there's plenty of time. If I think through that play, I end up 5-3 in CC. And honestly, I even realized afterwards that because I banished the Deathly Whale, and it just sat there, and then I looked at my hand for a while, and then realized what I had done. Nothing happened. No new information was gained or garnered, and I probably reasonably could have called a judge, and explain that to him and been like, I would like to banish a different card from hand. And I think there's a chance that they would have allowed that rollback because there's no difference, right? It's like if you go to play something and you pitch a card, but then before anything happens, before things resolve or anyone makes any further decisions, you're like, I want to pitch a different card. I forget the exact new protocol, but calling a judge over and sort of having them oversee the rollback is what you want to do. And generally, when there isn't any information gained for the opponent or game state alterations, I think they let you do it. So that's the one I'm kicking myself for. It's kind of a sour taste to leave the tournament on when I felt like I had mostly played pretty cleanly throughout the weekend. Um, but the deck worked well. It's doing some good, powerful things. It has good numbers. I want to say I think it was in the Runaways video with Cody Williams said that Vynnset's got good math, and he is not wrong. This deck has some very good math and some really cool effects and some awesome tricks. Um, my takeaways from the event are uh, well, there's a few of them. One is slow down a little bit, but there's a few card changes as well that I want to talk through before we start playing some games. Oh, yeah, no, it definitely didn't feel great ending on that one. Kind of a sour note for an otherwise what felt like a successful tournament, at least as far as constructed was concerned. Um, but it was a good time. My opponents were nice throughout, which is a really awesome pattern that Flesh and Blood continues to have. It was a really fun event to play in, and uh, from a from most perspectives was a well-run tournament. There's some funky issues with the drafting and the envelopes that the packs came in, but you know, it's never going to be perfect. Um, but the changes that I wanted to make afterwards, we can just take a look up here. Um, so saved the old version from Nats, gave it its own thing. Uh, and here are the changes that I've made so far. I might end up changing more before this coming weekend at Battle Hardened Columbus, but I will be there. I will be playing Vynnset, and we'll see. We'll see what I can do when I don't have to worry about not screwing up a draft. But basically, a few takeaways from the weekend. Rift Skitter. Rift Skitter was brought into the sideboard combat uh, to combat Dromai. It's the only innate Go Again that we really have access to in this hero. Well, that's not strictly true, but it's the only one we have with Go Again that is a Rune Gate. So the idea was, if they ever get the terrifying Mirror Guy into Passing Mirage hand, a Rift Skitter into a Flail to kill the Passing Mirage lets us clean that up. Um, I think I went a little too single-minded with this, or rather, when thinking about some other card additions I could make, I can sort of improve these slots into something stronger. Putrid Stirrings was fine. It was a speculative inclusion. It was cool. Let's run this when we need more cards. So I brought it into Bravo and Dash and Uzuri. Um, and it was fine. It was as advertised. I don't know how essential it is. Um, it's kind of you want more often than not you like to be able to carry over a spare attack in Banish so that sort of what rune gate threshold you're trying to meet for the next turn. And Putrid Stirrings uh, sort of cleans you out of banish too frequently for my liking, I guess. A strength of this deck is if you're always carrying over a second rune gate, then when the cards present themselves to be able to double gate, you can just do it because they're there. But Putrid Stirrings sort of ran a little counter to that. Um, it's by no means a bad card. I just don't think it's the card that my build needs, given what my priorities are, and the fact that I'm trying to make sure that this deck doesn't just get annihilated by Dromai. And last but not least, I ran Ebb and Fold. Ebb and Fold, I was going to just run into all the wizards. But, as always, Kano is a very minute subsection of the field. And, one card in 80 for a matchup that, again, you are exceedingly unlikely to see, especially when we already just have access to Arcane Barrier 4. It's probably a bridge too far. We don't really need it, especially since most of the Icelanders have not gone the way of the Rhea Adams Arcane Icelander and instead are playing more of the Bully variety. So that's sort of a small change to rebuy a slot. Funeral Moon is added, copy number 3. Overperformed all weekend. I've sort of I had this in all my original versions of the list, and then I cut them all, and then they've slowly crept back up, and now we're back up to the full 3. This card plays a really important role player role. It's great to hit off any of our extra banish effects because it's sort of a free roll. It's a 3 block, which is phenomenal. If we have awkward off turns into Icelander, if you're like, oh, I don't think we're going to be attacking this turn, or if you find your copy of Oblivion and have it in Arsenal already, you want nothing more than to see Funeral Moon and then just block a bunch of damage because you can banish Funeral Moon, get a rune chant. Play Funeral Moon, get a second rune chant. Keep all your cards for defense. Keep that Oblivion in Arsenal. And whether it's popping Grasp for an extra 2, or you hit another Funeral Moon, or maybe you already had some rune chants from a Deathly Whale, Funeral Moon is going to be really important for making Oblivion a good card that we actually want to be playing. It's not currently in my list still, but it's a really good wheels greaser card. And thanks, Chance and Daggers. I appreciate it. Vynnset is a blast, and I think she's actually pretty strong. So I'll be done reviewing these changes here in a minute, and then we'll get to some Talishar gameplay. Cool. So yeah, Funeral Moon just impressed me all weekend. And so that's why we're going back up to 3. And also, it's a 3 block. The opportunity cost of running it is low. And in reality, I kind of look at this card. It's a 3 block yellow Read the Runes, which yellow Read the Runes is a card that I've even considered running in past versions of this when trying to think through what cost and resource curves should look like. And this is just a version that's a 3 block that's got instant speed shenanigans that you can do. So yeah, Funeral Moon, very strong. The newest and spiciest edition is a couple copies of Art of War. So something that I realized when constructing my sideboard plan for Nats and hadn't had this epiphany yet, but when you get to go first, it's really awesome to run Revel in Runeblood because you can store an attack and you can double gate. You've got the extra attack there, so as soon as you hit a Deathly Whale, you're kind of off to the races if you have a go again effect. Art of War is a card it's going to wear a lot of hats for us in the best kind of way. So in Chain, it was obviously just a bunch of card advantage. Yeah, awesome, Scipio. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, Funeral Moon was great, and yeah, I agree. Rift Skitter, I brought it into the fatigue matchups because it was a card, but there are better medium cards that we could bring in those situations, and yeah, so that's why we're done with the Rift Skitter experiment for now. But Art of War is going to wear a bunch of different hats for us. So, like I said earlier, it's really nice to carry over extra attacks so that you can double Runegate. You can't always double Runegate though, and sometimes you don't see your Widespread Ruins or the things that let you banish free extra cards to get that card advantage engine going. So Art of War is going to be exactly that. It's going to uh, give us a way to banish extra attacks. So if we're ever forced to go second, I want all my copies of Art of War in the deck, right? Because if you go first, you get the free banish and you're good to go. If you go second and your hand has, either it's hard to catch up from behind the banishing 8-ball without taking a full turn off. Art of War is going to let us do that. And just because you don't double Rune Gate doesn't mean you can't double attack with this go again. Art of War is going to banish an extra gate for us, so we can save one for next turn. And you're going to draw 2 cards. There's a very reasonable chance that you just draw another attack. And if you only paid 1 resource into Art of War and you're floating some resources, you could play whatever attack you draw. You don't have to Rune Gate these things. They're still fine attacks on their own. So Art of War, I think, is going to be a really potent inclusion. And then the other part of this is I've loved having Pummel as the resource colors has been very strong. Part of that is consistency, gives us more pitch when we're not playing it, helps the curve work a little more nicely. But the Pummel discard, it's obviously good, and surprise damage is good, but it's almost a combat trick that we're just excited to use to push over our Mavsky's triggers. We've got reds and yellows in the main, and our shadow puppetry triggers. A bunch of turns in this event was, Mavsky's Rune Gate as a 2-card hand, and it just gets blocked. They prevent it, sure. It was, for they're high priority targets for blocks. So they're going to keep eating those sorts of blocks. But what if, so obviously pummeling over the top of a Mavrian Skies is obviously incredibly powerful. But what if you Art of War, banish, and +1 instead? I had been joking with my buddy Alex about putting Lunging Press into this deck, and for the uninitiated, here we've got Lunging Press. Any attack action card gets +1. We joked about running this, but getting a modal card that has access to, a +1 point of damage combat trick that can make our on hits connect is massive, especially when it's a source of extra banishes, it's a source of go again, and it's a source of combat trickery. Not to mention, there's worlds where, fun fact, because I messed this up in PT1, there's a 4th mode on Art of War that says you can defend with attack action cards from Arsenal this turn. If you're ever playing into a Dromai, or a new Prism or whatever, we have a ton of 6 power attacks in this deck, and again, it's very, very situational, but maybe circumstances are a little dire for you. Play Art of War, block with your Popper from Arsenal. Cool. Magically, you have a down and dirty. So I think Art of War is going to be an extremely potent inclusion in the deck that I'm really looking forward to trying today. And last but not least, we're back to some yellow Deathly Delights. I think that this is the value proposition here on a 3-block that's also a yellow, which in this deck fully counts as a resource card. Obviously a yellow's not a blue. If there was a 4-power version of this that was a blue, I'm all on board. But this still hits a breakpoint. It's a Rune Gate 2 versus 3, which is astronomically different, especially when you go into those longer games where you're running Grasp, because you're going to run through your Rune Chain generation. And this is just the value proposition here is phenomenal. If you put a Mavsky's in front of a Deathly Delight in an aggressive matchup, you almost have to get 2 cards for it. That the value of hitting is extraordinarily high, and following up with Deathly Flail is almost as good, because you're going to get a card or you're going to chew through their equipment very quickly. And the more copy of Deathly Delights you run, the more times per game flailing someone is effectively life neutral. And let me tell you, Flail's good when you pay a life, and if you just got to pay nothing and attack with Flail, then it is incredible. So, Deathly Delight back in the lineup for now. One other card that I have been looking at that I really want to really want to play that I haven't figured out exactly what I'm going to cut for it yet, but Beseech the Demagon. Haven't found the slots for it yet. Think it might, maybe take a yellow envelope slot initially. Probably only want two of this card because it can only apply to attacks from banish. So if you ever end up sort of flooded on these, you can't really do much with them. But plenty of late game turns with Vynnset, where my two card hand goes, um, you know, Deathly or Mauvrian's guys into Deathly Whale, and a follow up with a flail. Right? That's a perfectly serviceable turn cycle. They're going to want to block. They're going to also want to block the flail. But there are times where, the fact that the opponent could get away with just two card blocking, right? They're not overly concerned with flail. We're going to get our um, Deathly Whale rune chant from paying life no matter what. So like flail hitting in that situation doesn't hurt as bad. But when you grind down in the late game and you're trading these two card hands, the upfront 3 damage of Beseech the Demagon, in addition to being a shadow card that can let us pay for Vynnset to force through a point, uh, we sort of get the best of both worlds, right? If you're using two cards, attacking for 6 with Go again into 1, or if you're using two cards and you Beseech, pay a life, and then play your attack, there's more. The unpreventable damage means that we're triggering our widespread effects, um, and we're just threatening more damage up front, which very reasonably could take a third card, where the Mauve Gate Flail is only going to take 2. So this is a card that I very much want to explore, but it is not in the list yet for tonight. Maybe we'll change it and add one just for shiggles. But yeah, so that's where we are with this deck. Um, we'll go ahead and just for science, we'll cut one yellow envelope, and we'll put one Beseech into the list. Cool. And yeah, the reason that this is Beseech the Demagon and not Runic Reckoning, and I actually had this realization again, theorizing deck list changes with friends and teammates, is with Beseech the Demagon, you can use this to do the Spellbound Creepers pay a life at instant speed trick to double gate off of Deathly Whale, right? So if you have 3 rune chants and you lead on a Deathly Whale for rune chants plus 6, your opponent decides what they're going to do there. You activate Creepers, flash in Beseech, pay a life, break the chain, get 2 rune chants, and then follow up with any 2-cost gate that your heart desires. And Beseech is going to, give you 3 damage for your trouble, and it gives you the shadow trigger. You can't do that with Runic Reckoning. By the time your attack is attacking, your initial batch of rune chants are gone, and there's no more discount being applied to Runic Reckoning. And as much as I love a 3-block Nimblism, I do not love paying 1 for a 3-block Nimblism. I want a 3-block Nimblism, not a 3-block Come to Fight. So that is why Beseech gets the nod over Runic. And yeah, so this is where things are for now. My only other changes that could be made, these Phantom Banshees, I'm not married to them. These are the most likely cards to change next, I think. And then Tunic. I want it for the grindier matchups, but there's a world where even in the grindy matchups, it might just be better to have more armor and run Dyadic Carapace. In which case we get to reclaim another slot for other cards and sideboard cards. So, yeah, that's about where things stand with my Vynnset deck. So, without further ado, now that you've listened to me ramble on the Shadow Runeblade topic for over an hour, let's play some frickin' Talishar. Yeah, like Putrid and uh, Beseech They fill very similar roles, but Beseech fulfills its role off of a 2 card hand, and Putrid needs. I mean, if you're carrying over the Putrid or the Rune Gate, can be bigger off a 2 card hand, but realistically, that's a 3 card hand. Okay, so we get to try some of our board changes here. Uh, ba, 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 we get to go first, which is awesome. Gotta love that. Um, what did I board into Dory? We'll give Art of War a shot here. We'll get these Deathly Delights in because this is going to be a damage race to an extent. And we'll run the Funeral Moons to grease the wheels. Maybe we'll go 1 Banshee. Alright. Well, hard to argue with this. Yeah, this is pretty pretty great. Funeral Moon to start. We will grasp with Deathly Wail, play the Funeral Moon, not pay any life, Arsenal of Mob Skies, and go. Oh man, you know what? 1 turn in and I'm already misplaying. Probably would have been better to just hold Funeral Moon, because the extra chant last turn doesn't really do anything, so we could have had Deathly Wail there, and then been queued up for a double gate turn. One resource floating. Well, we definitely want to whale this turn. I think we'll take this initial hit. We'll let the spoils buff go away, and we'll see what the follow-up is. Okay, pitching Steel Blade. So if we block only with cards, the most they can pump this by is +4. If we block with a mix of cards and equipment, and the last card is Singing Steel Blade, they can pump it by a total of 5 because they can get. No, they can't do that because Puncture also costs 1. So the most they can pump this by is +4. So we're going to be aggressive. We'll block the 4. There we go. Yeah, if there's no reprise, they're not going to want to do that follow-up. All right. So let's get aggro. Actually, interesting. So we're going to Mauve Skies and Whale. And we're coming in for 4 Rune Chants and 5 Physical with Go Again. The Rune Chants, yeah, the Rune Chants already connect, right? So we're already getting 1 Rune Chant for our trouble. So because they've taken the chance, they block this out with 2 cards. We are perfectly content with that. Because now, when we break the chain, we can envelop, pay a life, and come in. Oh, nope, that's not how things work. Yeah. You know what, someday I'll learn how to count. Oh no. Wasn't supposed to play the gate. I need to Undo the gate. So we're just going to try and go back to the start of the turn, because this will just be easier. So, Mobs, guys. Whale. Take the rune chance. 2-card block. Awesome, awesome. Break the chain. And widespread. Now that I've executed this turn, I don't love it as much as when I initially thought of it, but that's why we're playing games, to learn stuff and get better. Yeah, I think trying to do this way was too cute. And you know, that probably is rude. I won't make suggestions to our opponent. We're gonna sink. Okay. All right. Yeah, okay. So this is pretty cool. We get to what's the better one? I think Widespread Ruin's probably more problematic for them right now. And we can Arsenal Deathly Whale. So we banish Widespread Destruction. We've got Funeral Moon, but we can't play it right now. So we're going to play Envelop. We're going to pay the life. And because we've paid the life, we can Funeral Moon as an instant. Between Widespread Ruin Banish, Funeral Moon, and the Envelop Rune Chant, we are now live to Rune Gate in this Widespread Destruction. Piercing Shadow Vice red. Yeah, it's a card that it was on my initial radar, and of the existing Blood Debt options that we could consider, it's definitely up there as one of the stronger ones. I think I still don't quite see it, I guess, is the best way I could think to say it. For the same reason that we're not running, Rip Through Reality or Meet and Greet in the deck right now. We didn't get the shadow non-attack actions that I anticipated getting. So we don't have things that are no action point. We'll pass Arsenal. Oh, we ate a determination. That is huge. Love that is gone. Okay, this next turn cycle is pretty solid. Because we're gonna hard cast a Deathly Whale, so I think this Deathly Delight is expendable. So this is cool because this is a double gate opportunity. But I think we're probably just going to opt to follow up with Flail and not double gate. I'd rather get our card advantage going and make sure that we're set up for another good turn next turn. Shadow Ice, I see it. I see why it feels like it should be good into it, but it's when people can block Arcane against us, they tend to because of our damage effects, and that one's no different. And I don't think it's doing anything drastically different than like Deathly Delight doesn't need the Arcane to connect for us to get more than 4 points of value out of it, whereas Shadow Vice does and is a red instead of a yellow. Okay, so Shadow Puppetry. Let's see. So if I pay the life, then they know that I'm threatening a second gate and can follow up with the second gate no matter what. If I don't pay the life, it probably advertises that I am going to flail afterwards instead. But I don't think that's a problem. Because actually, there's only one rune chant anyway, so if our opponent, either they're going to give us a tunic resource or a whole card to stop one rune chant, and that's fine. That's an exchange that we are comfortable with. This being a yellow whale and not a red when we were able to buff the damage is pretty painful. No reactions, and we flail. Yeah, I was going to say, this will inevitably eat a Refraction Bolter's block in this game. I don't know if that's the time I would have chosen for it, but to each their own. Okay. This next turn cycle is pretty good. Actually, yeah, so no, us not connecting with the other rune chant kept us from another one here. So yeah, it would have been worth paying and potentially double paying on that last turn. Because now we are denied the opportunity to do Deathly Whale, Creepers in Envelop, and follow up with a second attack, which is not great. It's kind of what we wanted to do. This is just 4. I think we just let 4 go. There we go. We get the glint. They don't get a reprise trigger. Okay, and we know there's no tricks here. So now we comfortably block and block. Yeah. Yeah, 2 things in this game I've done wrong so far. The opening turn banish was silly. It was a little too conservative. Didn't really make the most of our funeral moon. So we've denied ourselves the opportunity to double gate on 2 turns so far this game, which is, we have enough consistency issues without imposing them on ourselves. So we'll definitely do it. We'll carry over our Phantom Wraith. Please keep in mind, I still have less than 100 total games on this hero, so constantly learning new things and then also relearning lessons that I've learned in previous games. So trying to be a good source of testing and knowledge, but I am never going to play these games perfectly. Maybe not never, but mostly not going to play them perfectly. 3 pitching glint. So our turn, we can Phantom Banshee. Awkward to have all these attack actions in the same hand. It's not what we want to see. But this doesn't feel like where we want to Crown of Providence. I think we block with our delights and attack with Banshee next turn, Arsenal Deathly Whale to bail us out. Yeah, this is not great. We keep carrying over this Phantom Wraith because we prevented ourselves from getting the double gate turn. So now we've taken a few more points from this Wraith, which is not what we really wanted to do. Don't hate that. Spoils is really strong. Okay, now we get to double gate. We can Shadow Puppetry, Hardcast, Deathly Wail, Pitching, Widespread Annihilation, and probably chew through more equipment and still Arsenal and Widespread Ruin. So I think we make our opponent have it here, and if they want to break Bolters just to send another 3 with Dawnblade, then we'll block. But okay, Bolters down. Coming in for 4. No resources floating, so it's Iron Song response or bust as far as ways to punish me blocking. I don't think I'm afraid enough of a single Dawnblade counter, so I think I'm gonna let this hit because we're guaranteed a double Rune Gate turn and an Arsenal, and I think that's fine. I think our numbers are better in this matchup. This one. So we will Shadow Puppetry, Pale Life, Deathly Wail, Pitching Annihilation. This is actually going to end up threatening. I don't think there's any world where our opponent lets it happen, but threatening to triple gate if this Mob Skies connects. Yeah, because this will get 2 cards, as will the next one. And like if we flail, it probably just gets the bracers block. But this guarantees. No, I think we do want to. We'll break the chain here. We'll Mob Skies. And we will Phantom Wraith. Because this is threatening to let us follow up with Widespread Ruin. So we're going to eat 2 cards. Potentially an equipment block. And still carry over a Widespread Ruin. Our opponent, value-wise, almost has to block this. I would love for them to let this hit, but I think there's no chance of that happening. Okay, we get some real blocks here. Pass on this one, and we flail. A for effort. Still get the chant though. 4 pitching heart. All right, we are going to. So I don't want to let them hit, but I still feel like our math is just better. We're going to send We can pitch Delight to envelop, pay a life, wail for 9, sending across 12 damage, leaving us with a setup and an arsenal incantation that we can creepers in if needed. This has no go again. And they're not threatening a new counter, they're just keeping the same one. So, go gadget, Deathly Wail. Envelop, pitching Delight, pay a life. Oh, okay. Whew. Lag spike. I was like, I didn't count that wrong again, did I? Alright, so we've dealt damage. Blocking 3. Okay. So we don't have a double gate. This has a Warrior's Valor effect. Interesting. I'm very tempted to just give my entire hand here. So I think they've probably got an Iron Song response in Arsenal, which puts it up to 10. They don't have Go Again right now. And my turn, even if I accrue no rune chance, can still be 8. They need to use the resource to attack again. 9, 10, 11. Giving up the incantation in Arsenal feels like it would be foolish. I could pump this up to 9. I think we rely on our better math. Block this out. If they want to spend 2 cards to pump it over to keep a counter, that's fine. Okay, yeah, so we were denying the singing for a while. This can get an Iron Song response, which pumps us up to 11 apiece. Double Iron Song. Yep, that makes sense. This is why sometimes you put your entire hand in front of things. So we take 3. They keep their counter. And life goes on. So we'll come in with a 1-card 8. E-Pot, nice. Touche. E-Pot's a 2-block, haven't you heard? So unfortunately, they don't. This dealing damage to them isn't an effect that they particularly care about. Dawn Blade for 4. 1 card up. Alright, so actually, let's see. So we want to banish Deathly Delight. gives us 1 rune chant. And so I think we're going to respect this to an extent. The question is, to what extent? So all of the 1 for 3s in the deck are online. Puncture is a problem if we block with 2 different types of card, but it's still not lethal. So if we block for exactly 4, Puncture comes over the top for 4. So I think if we go up to 6, we can actually turn this Revel into something else and see if we get a better card. And this protects us from dying entirely to shenanigans this go around. Let's... Ooh, trading up. Alright, our hand just got a shit ton better. Banish, Deathly Delight. So this costs 1. Flashing in Runeblade Incantation also will cost 2. So we'll go here. We will not pay life for Vynnset. And we'll come in for 2 and 5. And we're going to spend our 2 resources and our incantation to... Okay. Oh, it's for 7 because the envelope, of course. No reactions. Ah, okay, there it is. The sink. No further reactions. We want to stay on the same chain link, notably. Creepers. Incantation. Pay 1 for flail. There we go. We eat the last of their armor blocks. We get refunded our life because Deathly Delight is still on the chain. So I guess... no, that was me not paying life on the envelope. Was a little bit of a punt because... Well, no, I would have paid life a second time. It puts us both at 5 instead of both being at 6. I don't know if that's really relevant or not. This is just coming in for 3, but our hand is an actual nightmare. I think we're taking 3 here because this can't. We won't activate Reprise, and we'll threaten 2 rune chants, 5 physical with Go again into Flail. Yeah, we're banishing Revel with this hand. No blocks. Okay, 2 rune chants. Shadow Puppetry. No life pay. But we're also having this incantation in play is enormous for our ability to close out this game. We're going to be demanding cards from Dory, but we took 3 last time. We obviously can't take 3 again. But with the incantation running, the odds of us being able to present a 2-card 10 are pretty high. Oh, if our opponent somehow decides to let this hit. Ah, okay. Got the sink. Makes sense. And 2 versus 3. But also, I take a point of pain to push 2. I think it's worth it. Ooh, actually, Steelblade Shunt is definitely a card that exists. But I think the value's still there, because this is a point that takes a card, this is a point that takes a card. Yeah, we're doing it. If I didn't want to hurt myself, I wouldn't play this hero. If they want to get me with a shunt. Yeah, okay, awesome. Taking a card here is huge for our ability to just block out this turn. Oh, Arsenal Pass? Perfect. I also am a dummy. I don't remember exactly when our creepers died, but feels like I should have been able to keep that around longer. Okay, so we want to envelop, because then we're definitely taking more cards. I think we want to save this envelop. Or do we save a Phantom Wraith? I think saving the envelop is better for what it enables. Or if I do both, that's 4 rune chance, which is a weird breakpoint for them, and 10 damage. No, I think sitting on the envelop is probably better. No, we do not want to pay life, because we just need to pull cards from you. Actually, though, no, we are. Yeah, this feels like a game that, with 2 slightly different decisions, we could be pretty firmly in the driver's seat of. But let's see. Okay. All right. We've got an envelop in Arsenal. Okay. So we can pitch envelop, play envelop. Gets us up to the correct number of rune chance. I think this is going to be the last time this game we can actually pay. And then we're going to arsenal this incantation for another turn. So our follow-up is actually going to be Scepter. Yes, we want to pay a life. Mobs, guys. Well, I have go again either way, so if after this attack goes through I decide I want to play incantation, I still can. Okay. So yeah, now with this block and a resource floating, we will just, yeah, they've got a point to stop Scepter of Pain, so we'll just run out a new incantation, get our rune chance, and say go. Oh, Nelly. Coming in for 3. Okay, so this is a weird spot. First time seeing Art of War, and I think we're going to do a defensive Art of War. Why don't I have... Oh, hang on. I need to always hold priority. Um, just... So we're going to play Art of War. Pitch that. Banish, draw 2, and buff attacks. Oh, oh my goodness. Okay, so that was really good. I need to not take 1, so I think we just block everything. Although that gives us a 4th rune chant, which is a breakpoint, so I think we're fine blocking for 8. Yeah, those early mistakes are killer. We didn't get out to the aggressive lead that we should have had, could have and should have had. Um, Banishing the Funeral Moon instead of a Deathly Wail early kept us from double getting on turn 2. And there was another turn as well where I think I didn't pay a life that I could have paid. Um, oh dear. See all these cards just in time to have to double defensive Art of War. uh, the problem is, I'm guessing I can't do that twice. Damn it. Wait, I am in full control. Did I? Only gonna have 2 rune chants, which is a problem. I don't know how I keep missing this stupid window. I'm sorry, opponent. Thank you for being gracious with me. There's a very real chance we just die because of this, but we sort of were priced into doing it. Doing another defensive Art of War. Buff attacks, banish and draw 2. Oh my god. Well, we're still dead because we're not going to have the requisite amount of rune chance. But this was kind of wild. Let's see. I can block for 4. And then on my turn, banish this. That goes up to 2. Yeah, damn. This is just a game we punted. We're going to take blood the next turn. Well played, opponent. And concede. Alright, well, our value per turn was not the best. But yeah, we left double gate turns on the table. Probably just wasn't wasn't playing aggressively enough in those spots, and it came back to bite us in the end. But Art of War, kind of dope. uh, hello, Katsu. This is a matchup where I have been on Quill Hand because I feel like we need to stay aggressive. And when we're going first, we want Revels. That was all Beseech's fault, absolutely. That damn Beseech. Oh, actually, I guess it sort of was, though. But with a resource up and a card in Arsenal, I feel like the Arsenal card was going to be our doom. Don't think we could have ended up keeping 2 cards anyways. And, yeah, we needed to keep 3 cards, but none of it really bailed us out there. Uh, we'll do... It's kind of a race, but yeah, I think we'll go with this. Oh my goodness. This sure is an opening hand. Like one of the best I've ever seen. Pass Arsenal. Oh mama. We're doing it. We're doing the thing. Our opponent is not going to know what hit him. I'm the Art of War deck now. Seven. Our hand is so good that I can't imagine not making them have Razor here. And if they've got it, sure. Ooh, what are they going to Arsenal? I'm the War Herder. Okay. So we're going to change this. Instead of always hold, we're going to hold for opponent actions. Okay. So we don't want to risk our own Revel, which I guess we won't if we do, because we're not going to be paying life this turn. Which actually not paying life this turn is a little unfortunate. No, because we're not paying life this turn, we'll go red mauve. We'll go widespread, and we'll see what they do. And if our opponent calls the shot like a genius, we'll just revel into ruin. All right, or we just don't have to. That's cool too. I want to pay life this turn. Okay. We're going to take a card from hand, and we're going to eat that arsenal. Okay, well, hello, Crown of Providence. Let's see if we get bailed out. Ah, I don't believe our opponent realized that they were going to lose Surging Strike to Annihilation. Fair enough. We try again. Alright, such a fool. Suboptimal viewing experience. I forgot to F11. Okay, we get a shot at redemption into Dory. It's also possible that Art of War is just the superior option over Revel. It's like it's go again for us, and it does other things. And Revel's really good for getting you sort of a guaranteed double gate turn, but in tandem it might be a little bit of overkill. Oop. Well, certainly not going to complain about this start either. So we get to go Banish Destruction, play an incantation, Arsenal Moss Guys, and pass. Perfect. Yeah, we're going to get to... We should get to Double Gate. No, we definitely can't Double Gate, is the correct way for me to say this. So the real question is this Mauve Skies necessary? I suppose what we can do with the Mauve Skies, though, is after we get our go again... Well, that's not even actually that threatening either. Valor. Valor and Supremacy. 8. 8's pretty good. Hmm. Go again only if it hits. This feels very early to really be thinking about giving 9. But the only way I double gate is if I Creepers Envelop. Alright, we'll do it. We'll make him have it to go over the top. And we'll turn Mauve Skies into something new. This is early to give so much equipment, but I think it's... Yeah. Seems to have worked pretty okay. Yeah, and I don't hate this. We'll get to Arsenal the Deathly Delight this way. Feels like an upgrade over the Mob Skies in this juncture. Okay, so Deathly Whale. Ba, ba, ba. Deathly Whale coming in hot. People love their Dory. Whoa, what the? That passed through what I want to do. Fine, we'll just always hold priority. Which I don't really love doing, but do what you gotta do. Alright, we got there. Seems like Vynnset might just be a hero that necessitates having full control mode on. Give me the arsenal, I demand it. Eight up of Warrior's Valor. That's alright. Oh, interesting. Actually, it's not really that great, though. But it is a cool line of play that we could potentially do. So, because Revel and Funeral Moon are both zeros, and we have Deathly Delight in Arsenal, that is a uh, that is a 2 cost, and Creepers costs 1. We can banish Phantom Wraith with Incantation, will be up to 2. And we can send our 2 and 6. That looks fairly unassuming. Because there's no on hits, I assume that. Okay, this is just 6. And the notable part is, even though we can Funeral Moon on our opponent's turn, we don't want to here. Okay, bolters come out. They didn't get any defensive power out of it. Uh, bolters. Come in for 3. I think, I think attacking twice is still really good. If I didn't know that their card in hand was supremacy, what would I do? I just banish this, block with that, hard cast Delight on my turn, and Arsenal a Revel. Blocking with Funeral Moon. Then creepers probably die, and I don't get good value out of it. Our opponent's got the counter. They're going to want to keep it. So when I send Phantom Wraith, like, it takes 3 cards for them to... Yeah, okay, so we've already dealt the damage, which is great. It takes 3 cards for them to stop Phantom Wraith and the Rune Chance. And they are just not willing to give that now that they have a counter. So we try and push forward the life lead and punish them for it. Notably, we're just using sure. Notably, we're just using the Creeper's Revel to effectively just give go again this turn, so we can Delight. We've already dealt 2 Arcane too, so we don't have to pay life for Funeral Moon. I have no reaction. Okay, now we instant speed Funeral Moon. There's no need to pay a life. We've now done attack and non-attack this turn. So we Creepers again. We Revel. We get 5 Rune Chance. But more importantly, the Revel is for getting our action point, not for gating anything. But we still send Deathly Delight which is another 10 damage. Yeah, I think this game so far, choosing to be more aggressive with our resources rather than blocking and playing into their hand, uh, has felt like it makes a lot of sense to do. So we hit him for another 5. When we close this chain, we gain a life. Big numbers good. True indeed. Okay, so I also... This is a turn cycle where we potentially want to ship creepers defensively. Oh, we're going supremacy and spoils. Alright. Now we're at 8. 8 is a big number. So they have 1 card left in hand, but they have Tunic. So Singing Steel Blade is on the table, as is Puncture. But I don't think we care enough when we can. We're so far ahead here, but not forcing them to expend at least a resource to do something seems foolish. And I want this Deathly Whale in Arsenal more than I want this Revel. If I ship 8 on equipment, and then we try and look for a Revel double gate turn in the future. So we're given that. We're banishing and sending Widespread Ruin next turn for sure. Giving all the equipment is 8. I think we save creepers and make them pitch to stop Arcane. Like, I think there's value to that. Especially if they're about to react over the top of this. Yep. Yeah, just had the response in hand. Touche. When you got it, you got it. But also, taking 8 with Go again there when it was definitely drawing a card. At least we made him spend it. And, it's still, worked out the way it worked out. But we didn't take all that much damage. And we are in the lovely position to send a 1-card 8 and keep an arsenal while having a life lead. Vynnset is a real big fan of these life leads. And we're keeping creepers again, which is good. Could also end up in an interesting situation where if we have a go again and an attack in hand into a gate because we have Revel, that's pretty cool. Hi there, Pickle. You want to go outside? Yeah, let me finish this game, then we can go outside. I wonder if Revel is just the card that goes in favor of Beseech. Revel is undeniably powerful. But if that card in hand was Beseech instead, this game looks different. Oh no. Well, if they hit me, I get Funeral Moon. Except that I want the Funeral Moon for my own turn. Another Supremacy. And a Determination. Okay, well, that is disgusting. But let's see. So on my turn, this blue pitches for a Grasp for a second Rune Chant so we can Ruin. No, I don't think that's worth it. So I think we're like, this is Determination on top of double spoils and Supremacy. So we just need to stem a bit of bleeding. I don't think we're gonna do Creepers things. Okay. Block with Banshee. Simply draw the good cards. Well, I wonder if if throwing Flail with 5 Rune Chants seemed like it would be better, I would do it. Oh no, we can't. We're not gonna. Big oof. Okay. Well, we block 3 that we can block with Dominate. Take 5, go to 9. Funeral Moon, banish Ruin, and serve up another decent turn. They can't keep taking damage forever. Big oof. Yeah, imagine if this turn, if Revel was Beseech. I mean, I do want that blue, but it's basically trying to hold on to more resources, and we'd give up more life just to do like Revel into Flail, which seems subpar since we don't get to keep this Rune Chain anyways. I think I'd rather keep the life total a little higher. Sure. And so they finally are going to get us off Creepers, but we're getting a card for it. Man, we had a little bit of weirdness. We haven't been able to float the whales. But yeah, I think that's my interesting notion from this game, is that Beseech instead of Revel could be the move. Still good with Creepers plays. Arguably better with Art of War, because we don't actually have to care about that first non-attack action. Okay. Oh no! Actual disaster. Uh-oh. Well, looks like this Art of War's getting banished. Wow. I could not have chosen a worse worse hand to draw here. Oh yeah. We are very dead. Oh, and the out for blood over the top. From the top rope. Oh, wait. Yeah, you can't do that. You need to pitch for your next hit. That'll do. That's a fast game. I think I was a little too ready to allow some counters. Uh, and that came back to bite us. We didn't. Yeah, I was too. Let the counter happen too early. Uh, for when compared to when we used our equipment, right? We used our equipment early, took no damage, one card block. That was fine. And we dealt 15 back, but then we took 9. And we dealt 12 back. And then we took 9, but the counters were going, and we didn't see a hand that, or I guess realistically, the time that we did see a hand that could have slowed them down, they went Spoils of War, Supremacy, Determination, plus 2 counters, and pushed 14 damage and drew 2 cards. um, but interesting nonetheless. All right, I'm going to go take a very short break and let my dog outside, and then I'll be back probably for another game or two before we call it a night. So stick around for just a sec, and thanks. All right, and we're back. We've even lightened up the place a little bit. An homage to our defeats at the hands of Dorinthia. Cool. Well, I'm going to keep the list the way it is, just for now. We'll get at least one whole set of games with this configuration before making any more changes. But Beseech the Demagon over Revel in Room Blood seems like a might be a good change waiting to happen. It's weird. I feel like I'm not seeing. I mean, I know I'm seeing deathly whales, but not seeing the flow of deathly whales that I'd love to see. Come on, opponent. Nobody wants to face Vynnset. Yeah, it's been interesting. The first game we we played ourselves out of two extra double rune gate turns that we could have had, and so we definitely took some extra blood debt in the middle of the game and ended up in a slog, and we couldn't quite pull ourselves out. That time, I don't know. It's a little bit of a Aurelius. I feel like I've played against this person before. Good luck, have fun. So it's Katsu. We want Quill Hand, even though it's Katsu. We really want to not miss on our good stuff. Do I want pummels or do I just want damage? Hopefully, like they care about pummels as much. You love to see it. Okay, they did bring Arcane Barrier. So for safety purposes, we will put a 2-cost gate out there. Sigil. Cool. It's weird, but we actually have a pretty high win rate into Katsu on Talishar. You got me. This feels premature to give Crown of Providence here, but banishing Deathly Whale, going up to 3, we can double gate next turn, and if we can like keep, yeah, we're gonna do it. The upside on hitting a good resource card is really high. Or that works too. Opponent probably thinks we're a little crazy for using Crown Providence there. But given the follow-up, Okay. Deathly Wail into Banish. So here we need to envelop first and pay a life. Then we can creepers in incantation after the fact to follow up with widespread. So go envelop, pitching wraith, pay the life. Oh, we are pitching. Interesting. Well, here's 8. Oh, it just doesn't block. Makes sense. Oasis. This is Ninja Turtle Katsu. My goodness. So we burned through 3 cards of defense. We get some setup for future turn cycles. We just get to rip all the tempo in the world. Okay. And we both banish. Rip. Okay, so we're going to have 2 rune chants. Envelop can give us a 3rd. They have an arsenal. So we'll go there. What doesn't have go again? No, that's okay. Envelop, pitch, pay. Wonder, are people assuming that they can... Oh, there you go. Oasis again. It's 2 Oasis down. Coming in hot for 4. Well, we're going to take this, and we're going to Funeral Moon, banish, Deathly Wail, so we go up to 3 rune chants. Block there. these are just staggered enough that I am okay. Kind of hate that this is just a clean 3 cards from them. I am going to Battle Hardened Columbus, yes. But the solace we can take is we've got incantations going. So, freebie set up for a turn. Huh. Well, I think we block with Dread Triptych, take 1, go Mauve, Whale, Flail, Arsenal, Moon. Our opponent is on Flick Knives. I don't know why that just jumped out to me now. Let me refresh. There we go. Flick Knives is an interesting choice. Now even more reasons that I can't and should not go to 1. Yeah, for sure. Come and say hi. That'd be awesome. Would love to meet fellow Vynnset fans. Yeah, so we're gonna go to 3 rune chance, which is fine. I don't really hate them sigilling here. This means they're probably going to apply actually 0 pressure next turn. Yeah, definitely better to notice Flick Knives at 32. I don't hate this. This is a not great hand for them to have that sigil on. Because I can pay life, I can flail, which means I'll get 1 there. Like if they just give me these rune chants, I am ecstatic. Okay. Cool. So we can present a pair of breakpoints this turn, which seems pretty strong. Though I want to lose life. So I think we're definitely gonna mob skies. We definitely need to go again. If I pay 1, sure. Okay. We're pretty even on cards in deck too. Cool. And the reason we paid on this envelope is so it leaves the option of Scepter of Pain follow-up as an option, as a viable plan, since they seem to not want to. The Oblivion number. Yes, indeed. Sure. Don't hate. Anytime I get the armor blocks, feels good. So I've paid life, and they've lost life. So I'm getting the whale rune chance no matter what. I think I want to flail though, because flail eats a card from their deck, and Scepter of Pain does not. And since our opponent looks like they're trying to play that sort of game into us, yeah, cool. Give and take. Sure. Knew there was a catch somewhere. That's okay though. We can block here, banish whale. We can go mauve into whale. 2 different breakpoints. Hopefully we deal damage, and then we can play Funeral Moon as an instant and pay a life, then break the chain and follow up. Oh wait, no. Nope, that's just not how math works either. Man, one of these days, I will stop thinking that I can gate a card that's in my hand. Sigil again. Well, that just means it's going to be harder for them to cover up my breakpoints that I will present. Like even this is all the cards from their hand. Then we follow up with Flail, throw out Funeral Moon for the fun of it, Arsenal Deathly Delight. Is it all 3 sigils? 1, 2, yeah, okay. So opponent's gained 9 life this game. Yeah, Moon definitely a bit less impactful with an active incantation. Funeral Moon probably also loses a little bit of value when we move away from Revel as well. Because having an instant that can be your first non-attack after a lead-off go again. Okay, that makes sense. Oh, hell yeah. Okay. This is it. We should finally get to see Art of War doing what we've brought it on. Yeah, so Flail Scepter is definitely sort of the primary loadout. When we've got Arcane, we go Grimoire. And I have Nebula Blade in the board, which I would bring in against Bravo, against Dash, and not Uzuri because Flail's a problem for them. But against the hard fatigue decks, I like having a weapon that's the 2 for 4. Actually, the awkwardness of this hand just became apparent to me. Mugenshi. We don't really care about Mugenshi. Um, So, obviously we want this Deathly Wail and banish, but we have to banish at the start of our turn. We don't want to banish Phantom Wraith because it's our resource card, so either we... Actually, no, this is fine. We are okay with this. We'll take the hit. You can have a card. You're not really playing offense anyways. So, this isn't our Art of War turn. But it still is a double attack turn, and we'll arsenal the Art of War for next go around. So we want Shadow Puppetry, pay a life, Deathly Wail. And the best part is this line's also going to let us carry over the Deathly Wail rune chance again. Because we'll attack with Deathly Delight on the same chain link. I could also... Oh, that's cute. I could also Art of War here and push this Shadow Puppetry trigger across. And then I can still Deathly Delight this turn. I can give the Deathly Delight go again so that we can follow up with Flail. I think it's worth it. We're going to do it. We're going to go this, that. We're going to do next attack, it's go again, and buff the attacks. Hell yes. Deathly Delight. Come in for 5. 6 with go again because we buffed. Oh man, Art of War, this is filthy. Art of War red, pay 1, plus 2 damage, plus flail. Well, yeah, the value on this Art of War is there. And then we'll end with Flail, because why not? Free real estate, that's what that is. And we'll pass the turn. Back up to 17, then back down to 16. We're still fully set up. Oh, this is it. This is the deck doing the thing. Oh my goodness, and we're going to get to double gate this turn too. Command and Conquer. Okay, so our turn is going to be Banish Phantom Wraith, go up to 4 rune chance, Shadow Puppetry, Widespread Destruction with go again, into Revel Phantom Wraith, so we can just save 3 life with Deathly Delight. It is not a Creeper Shadow Puppetry turn because we lost Creepers a few turn cycles ago. But we're going to get to double gate regardless. This is sort of best case scenario for drawing Revel. So, Phantom Wraith is the banish. Puppetry. Do I pay a life? Me paying a life, I don't have any effects that I want to pay life for. It's going to be 4 rune chance and 7 into 4 and 6. There's no way they cover all of that up. 4, 7. Let's see. So they could have. No, I just don't think we have a reason to. I think we get everything regardless. No. Yeah, see, so 4 rune chance, they're not going to bother to try and stop that. Flick Flack from Arsenal, sure. Here's another 10. I think we caught our opponent on a very red hand. Oh, right, Flick Flack. Gross. Dang, yeah, didn't quite get as many cards as I would have hoped. This is this is gonna come down to it. We get to throw. Like, I might actually Deathly Delight this turn, because I'd rather push damage and get. Alright, so 7. We still have Quill Hand, which is important. We're jockeying for life position, and they're not trying that hard to do combo things. So I think a point of life is more important than, well, but this is 1 more damage at their direction, and I can banish a card that I potentially want. I am behind on cards in deck, though. This will be an interesting decision point to look back on later in this game. If I block here, yeah, our opponent was on all reds that go around. Deathly Delight, Envelop, Pitch, Pay. Delight for 2 and 8. So the rune chants are going to come across. Threatening just over lethal. We've got Quill Hand still to bail us out if we end up needing to block with 3 cards. And Carapace to eat a Tunic if they're ever actually looking to threaten Mask. 8 on 8. Alright. Well, go back up to 8 end of turn. And they just pass. Well, this is definitely our Quill Hand moment. Yeah. Quill Hand coming out. Beseech, pay the life, so that this isn't a clean block, and also we definitely want that arsenal card dead. Motherfucking mobs, guys. So, presenting 12 here with Go Again, and a mystery card on the back end. Yeah, so they take the rune chance, and now they're facing down 9. Very real chance their arsenal's not a defense reaction here. So we will pass. No reactions. Resolution step. Great. Break the chain. Eat an E-strike. And flail, baby. We flailing. Okay. We'll see if we can get this Phantom Wraith to land from the top rope. So we want Envelop, Pitch Deathly Wail. I probably don't pay. If they spend a card on Arcane here, that leaves 3 to stop 7. Yeah, we'll pay. This is another interesting decision point. Okay, I guess that is a reason to not pay life. I did not pay attention to the fact that Tunic was up. So now they get free value out of the Tunic resource. Oasis, Oasis, Sync, Fate. Yep. There's that. Do you have a second one? No, they do not. All right. Well, that was a great game. Yeah, love getting an entire card for a flail swing. That's a sign that a game is going well. Won that one from 5. Feels good. 12 turns. Glad we got to see Art of War do what it's here to do. But we also saw Rebel look really good on that other turn, where they each looked phenomenal in this game. I feel like Rebel was a little more awkward in some of the other games. But maybe there's a world where you could just be on one Revel and 2 Art of Wars, and that can just be okay because you want different things at different points of the game. Cool. Yeah, Art of War looked very good, and we only really did, so we used it defensively twice and offensively once to push a. Let's see, on that turn, it was 1 point on the attack. The Shadow Puppetry trigger effectively drew us a card. Another point on the second attack, and the Go Again, which allowed us to follow up with a Flail, which hit. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, like that crazy good value. The combat trick aspect of Art of War is uh, going to be really fun to keep playing with. But cool. I think that's where we're going to wrap it up for tonight. Thanks for hanging out, everyone. This, again, is the list we played today. I will try and put a link to it in the video description, but you can also find it a couple different places. I think it got referenced on the events tab on February under National Championship, US, all decks, hiding out down here. Um, but yeah, thanks for hanging out. Looking forward to playing some more Vynnset this weekend. Probably will, tease around a few more of these cards to find a spot that I feel comfortable with going into the weekend. But the core of this deck is pretty much going to stay locked in. So thanks for hanging out, and I will see you next week. Probably back to Tuesday again. Only did Wednesday this week because I was kind of jet lagged from Vegas. But yeah, until then, stay cool, and we'll see you around the Demonastery Dojo.